Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قال إمام مسلم رحمه الله تعالى في صحيحه الحديث عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها حديث عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها من طريق هشام عن أبيه هشام ابن عروة عن أبيه عروة ابن الزبير عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها. With the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith of was mentioned in the Sahih Muslim we took last time, the hadith where Imam ibn حجاج هو إمام مسلم بن حجاج mentioned قال حدثنا أبو بكر ابن أبي شيبة أبو بكر ابن أبي شيبة. We mentioned before that Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba هو من أشهر شيوخ كتب الستة. He's from the most famous, amongst the famous shuyukh of the Imams of the Kutub al-Sittah. Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba, you'll find him in the narrations of Imam Bukhari, and the narrations of Muslim, and the narrations of Abi Dawud, and the narrations of At-Tirmidhi, and the narrations of Imam al-Nasa'i, and the narrations of Ibn Majah, and he's in other books. Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba. He also has a brother, we said, by the name of Uthman ibn Abi Shayba, Hada Akhuhu. That's his brother. Both of them, Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba and Uthman ibn Abi Shayba, min shuyukh Imam Muslim. They are from the shuyukh of Imam Muslim. Both of them have their writings, their compilations. The Musnad, Mada, the Musannaf, Afwan, the Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba Ma'ruf. No, the narrations that he collected that include the Mada, Barakallahu Fikum, the Tabi'in, and the companions. And you have his brother, Uthman. You'll find he wrote mostly in Tarikh, history. Tarikh, history. Both of them from the shuyukh of Imam Muslim ibn Hajjaj, rahimahumullah, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Wa Abu Qurayb, same is from the ulama and the shuyukh of Imam Muslim. Both of them narrate this hadith. The wow and the chain يدل على أن كلاهما يروي هذا hadith. Both of them narrated. Abu Bakr Abi Shayba and Abu Qurayb. Qala, they both said. Qala, we said, means two people said. If we say qala, he said. But if you elongate qala, that means two people said. That alif is name. Fudul. So both Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba or Abu Qurayb qala, they both said the same thing. Haddathana Usama. So they both narrate from Abu Usama. And Hisham. And Abu Usama got it from Hisham. And Abihi. Now, from his father. And Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Now. And the Nabiya sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam, she said that the Nabi, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, sami'a rajulan yakra'u Quran fil layl. He heard a man reading the Quran in the night, meaning Qiyam al-Layl. A man was praying. That means the man was in the masjid, as Imam Nawawee mentioned it, and Shaykh Umar Falata mentioned it. The man was praying in the masjid, night prayer. They lived in the masjid close to the house of the Prophet, where he can hear if they raise their voice very loud. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, فَقَالَ, so the Prophet said, when he heard that man reading in the night, يَرْحَمَهُ اللَّهُ, يَرْحَمَهُ اللَّهُ. We mentioned this before. Whenever there's a statement that's an action and then the dua, and Allah's name is in the context of doing something, then that means it's a dua. So if you say, Yubarak, Yubarakahu law, Yubarakahu law. You have Yubarak, that's the action. Who is talking about somebody, unspecified, and then you say Allahu. So you're talking about a person who did something, and you said Yubarakahu, Yubarakahu Allah, Yubarakahu Allah. May Allah bless him. Or in this case, he said, Yarhamahu Allahu, Yarhamahu Allahu, Yabarakahu Allahu. Or in this case, Yarhamahu Allahu. May Allah have mercy on that man who the Prophet is talking about. You heard him reciting the Quran. لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي, because that man, he reminded me. The lam here is for emphasis. Qada in the Arabic language, alamatu fi'l. Whenever you see a qada, that means the next word coming can't be an ism. Ism, a person, a place, a thing, a description, it can't be that. If qada is in the beginning of a phrase, qada comes before only a fi'l, a verb. And the lam is used with qada to emphasize the importance of this action. The Prophet said, لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي, indeed the man has reminded me. كَذَا وَكَذَا آيَةً, كَذَا وَكَذَا آيَةً, this ayah and that ayah. كنت أسقطتها من سورة كذا وكذا وكذا. أسقطتها كذا من سورة كذا وكذا. Here the Prophet ﷺ is saying the word أسقطت, يعني فعل والفاعل. سقط, something to fall. أسقطت, I lost it or dropped it. من surati كذا وكذا, from this surah and that surah. Because sometimes the words are in different surah. Sometimes it's in one surah. So here the Prophet is saying, when he heard that man reciting loudly in the night, it reminded him of a surah that momentarily it wasn't on his mind. Momentarily, it's as if he didn't know it. He forgot it. The man reminded him of that. And thus the Prophet said, Yarhamahullah, who, yani, may Allah bless him, لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي, yani, كَذَا وَكَذَا آيَةٍ كَذَا وَكَذَا. Indeed, that man has just reminded me of the statement in this ayah and that ayah. The Shaykh, he quoted the next chain and the next chain and the same wording and some additional wordings. The chain is still from the narration of Hisham ibn Urwa from his father, Urwa ibn Zubayr, from Mada, his aunt Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Where she said, Kana Nabiyyu. So the first wording she said, Anna Nabiyya, that the Prophet. Then this one, Kana Nabiyyu, the Prophet used to. Kana Nabiyyu. So Kana, again, is a fi'lun. Kana yakunu. He used to, he was, he is now, like this. Kana Nabiyyu. Kana Nabiyyu. Very important when you talk about the field of Nahu. If you say Anna Nabiyyu, that's wrong. You have to say Anna Nabiyya with Fatha, Mansuban. إذا كان اللفظ قبل هذا من أن وكذلك إن وأخواتها لازم يكون اسم منصوب. The word that comes after أن وإن with shadda on the noon makes the word in front of it have to end with fatha. They call it mensubat. So if you say anna nabiyyu, that's wrong grammatically. You have to say anna nabiyya. Now, here, kana. If kana comes before something, the thing that comes after kana has to be with a dhamma. Wa kana Allahu. Wa kana nabiyyu. Here she said kana nabiyyu with a dhamma. Because kana is it's a verb, and the job of kana makes what comes after it. If it's a person or a thing, then it makes it dhamma. And if inna comes before a person or a thing, then it makes it with the fatha. So let's say kana yurfa'u ism wa tansibu al-qabr. Whatever comes after kana has to be with a dhamma. And whatever precedes that word that comes after kana must be with fatha. And the opposite for inna. Inna yansibu al-ism wa yurfa'u al-qabr. It makes whatever comes after that inna with fatha, and whatever comes after that word that precedes inna has to end with dhamma. This is very important in the Arabic language. Now, she said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. He said, استمع. The Prophet istama'a. Istama'a is when you're trying to listen. Istami'u. 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 He was listening. Istami'u. Pardon, I said istama'a. Istami'u. Istami'u. He was trying to listen to the person's recitation. Istami'u. Istami'u. قراءة الرجل. قراءة رجل. مضاف مضاف عليه. مضاف ومضاف إليه. Rasulullah was trying to listen. قراءة رجل. قراءة رجل. He was trying to listen to the recitation of a man. And it's not qira'atu rajulan, it's qira'ata, because the recitation of the man is affected by the action of the Prophet. That's the thing the Prophet was trying to listen to. So qira'ata is with fatha. Normally qira'atu would be with a dhamma, and rajulan would be with kasratan. Like Rasulullahi and Baytullahi, the first letter, the first word ends with a dhamma, and the second with kasratan. And in this case, qira'ata, mansuban with the fatha, rajulan. The recitation of the man is what the Prophet can Nabi sallam istami'u. Qira'at rajulan. He was trying to listen to the recitation of a man. When we talk about the likes of these issues in the Arabic language, very important. Because even when we talk about in the current time we live in, when we talk about listening to something versus hearing something. Sometimes you hear something, you don't intend. You're not trying to listen to it, but it falls upon your ears. You're not held accountable for what you hear because it fell upon your ears. But if you're trying to listen, you're focusing, this is istami'u. That person, the alif, sin, and ta, these are the ulama of lugha. They said, هذه حروف الطلب. هذه حروف الطلب. Alif, sin, and ta. When they're added to a word, that means the person's trying to do whatever word that the alif, sin, and ta is connected to. So, for example, if the word is amara, to command, to be in charge, or to supervise, you say istamara. That person is trying to istamaru. He's trying to gain some authority. He's trying to gain some position. If you say istala'a, the word yani ala, istala'a. Istala'a, that person is trying to be superior. He's trying to be above. Istahaba. Istahaba. From the word hada, to menstruate. So the lady, her cycle, her body is trying to do a menstruation, but it's not doing a regular function. Maybe it's skipping, it's prolonging, it's a day, it leaves, comes back, it's spotty, it's head like this. It's the hada. Here, the Prophet is istami'u. Qira'at rajulan. He was trying to listen. So imagine you hear somebody and then you say, wow, that's nice. Then you really kind of tune in and make sure you hear every word, every ayat, hakada, like this. This is the second word of Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. The man was in the masjid. فَقَالَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ. So the Prophet said, may Allah shower that man with mercy. May Allah show mercy upon that man. لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي آيَةً. Because he reminded me of an ayat that كُنْتُ نَسِيتُهَا. Momentarily I forgot it. Momentarily it slipped my mind. And we said that many people tried to say that this shows you the position of some of the people like the Shia, that the Quran that the Prophet has is not complete. Allah knows that he forgot some. It's not complete. He didn't remember everything. How could it be the finalization of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because of these hadiths they don't understand. And they look for opportunities to attack the Prophet, and if they can discredit his mission with the Quran, they discredit all of Islam. If they discredit the Sunnah of the Prophet, then they discredit the Sunnah of the Prophet by way of discrediting the Quran. So this very important narrations from the narrations of Imam Muslim. We also mentioned that the narration, Imam Muslim mentioned, قال حدثنا Yahya ibn Yahya. Yahya ibn Yahya is from the ulama of Imam Muslim, but he's from the one who used to read to Imam Malik. قال قرأت على Imam Malik. He said, I read قال وحدثنا يحيى بن يحيى آسف قال وحدثنا يحيى ابن يحيى قال قرأت على مالك. مالك here means Imam Malik ibn Anas رضي الله تعالى عنه. He said عن نافع. نافع مولى ابن أبي مولى هو يعني نافع هو مولى ابن عمر. مولى ابن عمر. عن عبد الله ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنه. So you have Imam Muslim now reading حدثنا يحيى بن يحيى قال قرأت عن مالك. He said I read يعني this يعني from Imam Malik to Imam Muslim عن يعني نافع هو مولى ابن عمر عن عمر عن عبد الله ibn Umar. Nafi Mawla ibn Umar, meaning he's the servant of Ibn Umar, and Ibn Umar is the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Abdullah ibn Umar. Min Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, from the Prophet himself, Ibn Umar says, that the Prophet said, إنما مثل صاحب القرآن إنما مثل صاحب القرآن إنما مثل صاحب القرآن. The example of the person that is a person of the Quran. كمثل الإبل معقلة. It's like a camel that is tied up. المعقلة from the word عقلة. معقلة. Subhanallah. And ahada alayha, if you were to tie it up and supervise it. Amsakaha. When atlaqaha, atlaqa, to let it go, from the word talaq, atlaqa, to dispatch. Dhahabat, then it will go. This is the example from the narration of Ibn Umar, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, anhuma, him and his father, that he narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The example of the person of the Quran is like a camel and another word than ahadaha, yani tie it up, ahadaha, to make sure that it's fastened down. And this one he said mu'attala. When you think about intellect, you're tying stuff down in your mind. It's not leaving you today. You had it 2 hours ago, and your mind is solid. It ties down thoughts, feelings, ideas. The Prophet used that word for tying down the Quran. And the example of the person with the Quran, the one who has the camel and he does that to the camel. If you did that to the camel, then the camel would be there. You would amsakaha. You would hold on and maintain that camel. When atlaqa ha, if you were to let it go, untie it, dhahabat, then it would walk away. And this is the same thing for the Quran as the Prophet ﷺ is trying to tell us. Take about 5 more minutes, inshallah ta'ala, 10 at the most, and we'll stop. So these narrations we went over last time, there are more that we covered. But the point is understood from this last narration that all of these different scenarios show a person that they shouldn't make the Quran mahjuran, something that is left alone. that a person shouldn't make the Quran mahjuran, something hajran, that is left alone. Because if you leave the Quran alone, then many examples from what the Prophet said, the Quran will leave. Similar to a camel that you untie, it will leave. You won't have it. And there's another narration that we mentioned last time, Imam Muslim brought it, where this narration, it suggests even if it means reading it in the daytime. Most of the narrations talk about the night because this man was praying in the night. That's clear. But there's an additional narration that one of the people narrated. He had the idea, and the idea is understood from the companions. It's understood from the Tabi'een, Itba' Tabi'een, the 3 generations, that it's not excluded to just the night. But that if you read the Quran in the day and the night, you make sure you're busy with it at different times, that Quran will stay. The best way is in the night. The best way is in the night because of the blessing of reading in the night, the blessing of the one who leaves his or her sleep in the night to read that Quran. It sticks. It holds. You're tying it up. But it doesn't mean if you do it in the daytime that that's not a way to hold on to it. It doesn't mean if you do it in the night, don't do it in the day. It doesn't mean if you combine between both of them, you'll be successful. Reading in the day and in the night. The thing is, kathrat al-qira'ah, to read a lot, to use it a lot, to recite it, reflect upon it a lot. This is the main thing that we get from the likes of all of these ahadith. This is the way that you tie it down, by reading it, by using it, by applying it, and this is the main thing from this chapter. Also, Shaykh Umar Falata, when he was talking about this issue, he mentioned some of the other hadith around the virtue of the Quran, such as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the Bukhari and Muslim, al-mahir bil Quran, al-mahir bil Quran, al-mahir bil Quran, al-ma'ir bil Quran, the one who's busy with the Quran, reading the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, كَسَفْرَةُ مَا كِرَامٍ بَرَرًا. كَسَفْرَةُ مَا كِرَامٍ بَرَرًا. Whoever is reading the Quran fluently, and this is it's subhanAllah when you think about it. The Prophet ﷺ, when he said, al-ma'ir bil Quran, ma'ir means that person like you're cruising. Ma'ir. Or fluency, when you cut the water on, it's not skipping around, it's actually coming out the faucet. If you're reading the Quran often, if you're praying in the night with it, if you're using it in the daytime, the more you use it, you'll become good at it. So Prophet said, al-ma'ir bil Quran can Safrati Kiram Barara. He's like someone who's reading it with the angels. And you know the angels not going to make mistakes. They're going to read it fluently. They're always with the Quran. They're not, and as Allah mentioned in the Quran about them, La ya'suna ma amarahum. They don't disobey Allah and what He commanded them. وَيَفْعَلُوا مَا وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. But rather they do the opposite. Whatever Allah commands them, they do it. So let's take this example of the Kiram and Barara, the angels. They're reading the Quran fluently. Means the more you read that Quran, you're going to read it fluently. Number 2, if you're likened to the angels who read the Quran with fluency because of your using the Quran in the day and the night. Also, don't forget, part of being like the angels is to not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what He commands you. If He commands you something, obey Him. If he forbids you something, stay away from it. It's not just that you read fluently, but you yourself, Allah is going to ask you about the Quran. As the Prophet said, the Quran, hujjatun laka aw alayk. It's going to be for or against you. It's not proper that we read the Quran with fluency, but we disobey Allah concerning the Quran. It's not proper that we read the Quran with fluency, but we have a different belief than that Quran that we read. It's not proper that we read the Quran with fluency, but we ourselves don't follow the Quran. As if we don't read it, as if we throw it like the Yahud behind our backs. So these two ingredients, the Prophet who reads the Quran fluently, with efficiency, this shows you that person is with that Quran. If that person wasn't with the Quran, they would be doing the other thing. And the Prophet said, وَالَّذِينَ يَقْرَؤُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَيَتَتَعْتَعْ. وَيَتَتَعْتَعْ means he's struggling. He's stammering. He is wrestling with the words. He's making a mistake. When something you don't read, something you haven't really visited, something that you don't spend time with, it becomes difficult to read. So here the Prophet said, فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ. You still get 2 rewards. Why? Because if you're sincere, there's a reward, and you're trying. But one of them shows the one who is not reading fluently like the angels. And perhaps that person is not reading yet the ta because he or she abandons the Quran. Allah musta'an. So this is one of the things the Shaykh mentioned, that hadith Shaykh Umar Falata, because it shows us the idea of the virtues of holding on to the Quran, reading the Quran on a regular basis, how Allah, Messenger, encourage us to be like that, because it's as if we're reading with the angels, as if we're like the angels, because we were here with the Quran. Also, Shaykh mentioned, Shaykh Umar, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the one who reads the Quran, the one who reads the Quran, man qara'a harfan min kitabillah, whoever reads a letter from the book of Allah, he will have a reward. And the Prophet said the rewards are ashra amthaliha. They are multiplied times 10. He said, I don't mean that alif, lam, and mim, like in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, the beginning of Ali Imran, the beginning of many surahs, that's what's considered harf. He said, what he mean is alif is a harf, lam is a harf, mim is a harf, meaning every single letter. So every single letter you'll be rewarded. Every single letter you'll be raised. And this should encourage us not to abandon the Quran, that which the Prophet ﷺ is telling us. If you read it, if you tie it down, if you use the Quran in the day and the night, if you ponder upon it, reflect upon it, if you practice it, then inshallah wa ta'ala, this is something that will help you to tie the Quran down. It won't get away from you. Also, the last hadith from the narrations in the Sahih Muslim that we took last time, the Prophet mentioned the one who forgets the Quran. The one who forgets the Quran, the Prophet said to him, bitsa man, nasiya, bitsa man, hafidha, min al-Quran, thumma qala, yansa. The Prophet ﷺ said bitsa. And the Shaykh, he said bitsa here means something is blameworthy. So the Prophet said bitsa. This is a major sin, that a person will memorize something from the Quran and then say, you know what, I forgot it. So the Prophet ﷺ, he blamed the one who memorized something of the Quran and forgot it. And wallahu musta'an, I can say that in my years of being Muslim, I actually met people that told me those stories. I'll share just a few and then we'll end. One person I remember, He was Allah Musta'an. He was a dignitary from Sudan. I won't mention his name. Somebody who was dear to me, and I heard that he died. Rahimahullah ta'ala. I remember one time we were talking. I went to visit him. He had a store in one of the parts of the rough part of the neighborhood we lived in. And he told me, he said, I used to be half of the Quran. I was shocked. I said, wow, subhanAllah, really? He said, yeah. He said, Allahu Musta'an. He said, I forgot most of it because of dunya. La hawla wa la quwwata billah. And then he had a nephew. He said the same thing about his nephew, that he doesn't remember anything, even Al-Fatiha. And this is an example of, if you don't tie the Quran down, if you don't do what the Prophet said, then the Quran, it will be like letting go of the camel, untying the camel. And the Prophet said, Bitsa man hafidha, yani, shay'an in the Quran, thumma yakul, yani, nasituha, yani, naam, yani, that person has a major problem. It's a big problem for him that he memorized something from the Quran. Then at some point he says, you know what, I don't know that anymore. I forgot it. Allah Musta'an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us to understand the importance of this Quran, that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned many virtues of it in the Quran itself, and the Prophet in his prophetic sunnah, the virtues of this Quran. One of them is that if you stay with it, if you tie it down, if you busy yourself with it, it will stay. And if you let it go, Allah Musta'an. Any questions? Any questions? If you share.
Yeah.
So,